Good afternoon, good evening. This is Harlem Network News, and I am Terri Wisdom. And as many of you know, Harlem Network News is a media platform. We started at the onset of COVID, and we are still here. Our mission is to really assure that the Harlems of the world are informed. A lot of our stories are not told. People don't get the information. And so it's really critical. We are here to inform, to engage, and to call to action.
Mhm.
And that is more critical than ever, especially in these times that Black media have a voice. And just because there's so much going on with the media, so much misinformation, and then across all social platforms. So we're definitely doing what I call our Black job to get out the news and information. But today I have with us one of my media journalism colleagues. She is from South Carolina,
Mhm.
and we met through, how there's 1 degrees of separation. Her sister, however, she was at the Democratic Chicago Convention, and
Mhm.
we have just kept up, coordinated, and just bouncing news and information. And that is in the person of Catherine Fleming Bruce. And Catherine, if you would say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit about who you are, whose you are, and even the fact that you ran for Senate. So let's get started.
Okay.
Good,
Well,
good
thank you so much, Terry, for inviting me to come back and speak with all of the folks in the New York area and the broader community that watch your show regularly. My name is Catherine Fleming Bruce. I live in South Carolina. I'm an author. I'm a historic preservationist. I do media. I have a channel on YouTube called Catherine Fleming Bruce for the United States. And I do politics. I had a run for Senate, for US Senate in 2022, and continue that's kind of a continuation of my political work.
Okay.
I also have a PAC called Camelot Excalibur Trust. I do some work out of that, partner with a number of groups, Black Voters Matter and Public Citizen and other groups working on civic engagement. And but this opportunity to make sure that we're connecting with people and giving them the download what's going on, that's one of the most important things that we do. So thank
Okay.
you for having me.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on because I think one of the things that also happens, and I see this across the board, even with mainstream media, that what is happening in New York City you don't necessarily know in South Carolina
Mhm.
because you're not seeing our local news. And
Right.
even the news and information that is transmitted for national news, you might not be seeing the same thing. So, and then you fill in the blanks with social media and so on and so forth. So I think it's very important um, that we, as media people,
Mhm.
keep one another posted. And I have found that we're also a member of Win with Black Women. And that
Mhm.
has been one of the great advantages because there's women from all over the country and we hear different stories
Mhm.
and we put all our chips together. So news and information, especially at this point in time, is skewed in
Mhm.
many, many, many ways. And it's also 2 minute sound bites. So a lot of people miss what's really going on, or
Mhm.
they hear it and they say, okay, that's a fact, you know. So
Yeah,
we
certainly a lot to cover right now.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So let's just dive right in. I know I wanted us to talk about well, a lot has happened. I mean, we had the election, and
Mhm.
Donald Trump was elected. And
Mhm.
that situation, and I think you came on, we talked,
Mhm.
and with another colleague who is very active in politics and, part of the Divine Nine and so on and so forth. But with Kamala Harris losing, quote, the election, because in a lot of ways she won,
Mhm.
just in terms of what she galvanized in a short period of time. But bring us fast forward to the inauguration, to all the
Mhm.
different things that have happened, and things are moving at lightning speed. Okay,
Right.
lightning speed. So
Right.
let's talk post inauguration. And then when we get to the end of our conversation, I want to talk about the Kamala Harris and where does she fit in this at this time?
Okay.
If
Well,
that's
I am going to
okay.
backtrack a little bit
Okay.
from the election to the electoral college
Mhm.
approval votes. That happened in January. And of course, January 6th is
Yes.
the same date, but that was infamously the date when, all of this havoc broke loose during the Trump era. But
Yes.
President Biden at the time, welcomed Trump to the White House and,
Mhm.
made very strong declarations that, we were going to follow the rule of law and a peaceful transition of power and so forth. So Kamala Harris, as vice president, presided over the counting of the electoral ballots. So,
Okay.
that was something that, we all had to watch her keep her stiff chin up because
Okay.
I think the last person who, I can't remember the last vice president who had to do that, I think it was Al Gore, um,
Okay.
had to actually do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from there, we moved to the inauguration. And there were a number of Democrats who
Mhm.
announced that they weren't going to attend. Um,
Yes.
I think AOC,
Mhm.
um, a number of others, and I had to list somewhere, but about 14 or 15 Democrats that
Absolutely.
they
Absolutely.
were not going to come.
Fine. And I
Jasmine
know
Crockett,
even the first lady, Michelle Obama, I believe, you know,
yeah, she did not come, and
yes,
then we had the death of Jimmy Carter,
yes, yes. So
also in January, and I think our flags are still lowered across the country for
mhm.
him. So today will be
Yes.
the final day that the
Okay.
flags are lowered. But Michelle Obama did not appear at that event
Mhm.
either. So there was some comment and speculation about that. But
Mhm.
she did not come to the inauguration, and about 14 or 15 Democrats did not come. Um, but of course, Biden and his wife Jill were there.
Yes. And all of
The
all of
Clintons and the
the
Bushes,
presidents. Yes.
and yeah, the other
Yeah,
presidents, and Barack Obama was there.
absolutely.
Um, so from there, the same day and the day afterward were a slew of flurry of executive orders
Mhm.
from the president's office.
Yes.
And so many of them had to do with, um, yeah, we talked about pardoning the insurrectionists, which our U.S. Senator has said that was a mistake to do, Lindsey Graham. Uh,
Uh-huh.
we talked about the issue of birthright citizenship. So a number of these things that have been signed into law, we can expect a legal challenge on
Mhm.
those. So birthright citizenship is whether or not a person born in this country of parents who are either not legal or have started their process and have
Mhm.
not completed it.
Okay.
That range of people might not, but of course, there might be some other issues where we think somebody hasn't been born and that person is reported, and that's going to
Right.
create some havoc
Right.
there.
Right. Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, there's
So for
definitely.
clarity, if the parents have actually completed the citizen process and are naturalized citizens, are those people, is their birthright valid?
Well, there might be some people who try to push against that as well,
Okay.
but right now it's simply those who are not lawful. And as a matter of fact, so you go from there to ICE picking up people and deporting them. That was one of the first steps that you see.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
I have heard some mistargeting where a grandmother, a mother, and
And is this in your area, in the South Carolina area, or
this
parts of?
particular one, no, but
Mm,
a grandmother, a mother, and a child about 3 or 4 years old were, out shopping and speaking Spanish to each other,
uh-huh.
and they were detained,
Okay.
and they had to prove, no, we're U.S. citizens and so forth. I've heard some Native American people being picked up.
Wow.
So
Native Americans.
those, yeah, so
Wow.
we have things that are happening as a result of this push. Now, in terms of what is impacting us here in a red state, I think we see a couple things. One of the most recent things
Mhm.
that we're seeing in South Carolina is the president has focused on school choice
Mhm.
as opposed to public schools, and
Okay.
has been making a big push for that. And of course, that push has been on here in South Carolina for a while.
Mhm.
So that's going to be, and it did go before the courts here in South Carolina.
Okay.
They said,
Okay.
that's not constitutional, but they're trying to bring it back again.
Mhm. So
So some
school
of
of choice, this is Harlem Network News. I'm Terri Wisdom, and I'm here with Catherine Fleming Bruce, journalist, premier from South Carolina. So she's just given us a breakdown on some of the executive orders and also what is impacting the South Carolina area. And we were talking about school of choice. What is that? What is that?
school choice is the creation of schools outside of the public school system,
Right.
which may include charter schools and so
Charter
on,
schools. Uh-huh. Okay.
and the effort to direct public dollars to these private entities.
I see.
So those might be religious schools or
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
charter or other.
Uh-huh.
So the argument against it is that we want to keep public money in public schools,
Uh-huh.
and so that argument is being amplified by actions by the president right now.
Okay. Okay. So
So
that's
I also want to say something about DEI
thank
and the federal grants and loans.
yeah,
So
that's a big one.
yeah, so the federal grants and loans we had last week in addition to this other flurry of EOs, executive orders, we had something from the OMB Office of Management and Budget, that
Mhm.
said we're freezing all federal grants and loans. The exception was supposed to be people who get Social Security or
Mhm.
direct payments,
Okay.
but a lot of things that we see and take for granted in our community, which might be people's jobs who are working in education or in other
Mhm.
areas,
Mhm.
maybe science or research at a college or things like
Okay.
that, but they may be working wholly on a federal grant.
On a federal grant. Got it. Got it. Okay.
Yes. So a lot of those people are afraid some people's salaries may be attached to a federal grant.
Okay.
And one of our campuses, Benedict College, I
Okay.
saw that a
Yes.
faculty person
Mhm.
had published on social media part of a letter from her president saying, oh, we'll keep our eye on this, and we don't know what
Mhm.
the impacts will be.
Right.
Student loans
Right.
may be a part of that. And if
Pell
students,
grants, all of those things.
yeah, so students can't get their money, they're not going to be there, their education is
Mhm.
put on hold,
Yeah,
and
that would
some
be
of the
great.
faculty and
Back.
staff who depend on that, they might have to be laid off. So many ramifications. Now
So
that
where did
has,
we wind up with that? Because I know there was supposed to happen, but be a freeze till Monday. Where are we in the world?
well, it was there was an emergency court hearing, and it was frozen until Monday.
Okay.
Okay, Monday the 3rd, but we don't know if they'll come back in a different direction or different wording, what might happen. But the Trump administration is saying, we have certain goals and agendas, and we want to make sure that all the funded programs are kind of aligned with this agenda. So, we're not sure what that means at this point to have that alignment. But the cue from DEI might give us an idea of what that is. And of course, DEI is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And over the years, we have seen corporations, colleges, institutions, a variety of businesses that have a DEI, diversity, inclusion, equity, and inclusion office or unit. They have that in the military as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, to make sure that, and the goals for that are to make sure that there's a diverse
Balance. Yes,
group
diverse.
of people, and that may mean more than race. It may mean gender. It may mean people who have disabilities. So that variety of people would be included in that. So now these programs are being choked off by the Trump administration, and we will see states following suit. So here in my state of South Carolina, we have Costco, and of course you all have Costco up there too.
Yes, yes.
And
yes.
Costco has said that they're not going to set aside their DEI program. Our attorney general has called for them to do so in South Carolina.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a powerful move. I know here, we have Costco in New York City. We actually have a Costco in Harlem. And Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network actually did a rally to Costco. And, everybody went in, got their Costco cards, and, there were a few Costco gift certificates, given out by the National Action Network to really just say, we are supporting companies that support DEI. And I believe in Newark, New Jersey, there's another rally with Reverend Al Sharpton, as well as Mayor Ras Baraka, to just look at this situation and have some presence regarding it. So, but we haven't had any broad strokes from the state telling Costco that they've got to, do away with their DEI. And I think one of the clarifications in the discussion, DEI does not necessarily mean that those that are coming through are not qualified. It doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't have to meet the same criteria, but it just means that they're making sure that there is diversity. So that's what's got to be looked at. It's not like these people weren't qualified and that's why, they got in. So we've got to look at that. But that's been a broad stroke because I think if you will clarify, even in the government offices, they, the federal offices, they've been doing away with the DEI. They also, the branches or whoever, the break of it. And then the other thing that has happened, which you may have more information on this, is that people who I guess you could say were public servants or public workers in the government, a lot of those people were furloughed or laid off or given a buyout or moved to other divisions. So there's
Mm-hmm.
been, I mean, you know, had when was the inauguration? You know, it was on the 20th, ironically on Dr. Martin Luther King Day. And we know that Reverend Al Sharpton, there was a big event at one of the AME churches, you know,
Mm-hmm.
just really standing for Dr. King and saying we're not going to be at the inauguration, but also stating that in this kind of time, we really want to stand for what Dr. King stood for. So, lot of things. But if we think that that was on the 20th, and here we
Yeah.
are at the end of January 31st, and
Mm-hmm.
the head could spin at everything every day. There's
Yeah,
something else
yeah,
that's hitting.
totally, totally.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
to, talk more about the federal employees, of course, there's a program called Doge, which is Department of Government Efficiency that is led
Okay.
by billionaire Elon Musk.
Okay.
And so part of what we're seeing is probably recommendations from that organization to say, oh, we want to, streamline government and make it more efficient and shut down some agencies and strip some agencies down to the bare bones. And some of that happened with the FAA, which is the Federal, Aviation Administration.
Okay.
And the day before this crash, the
Huge
Department of
crash at
Transportation
Reagan
person
Airport on
was
Monday.
sworn in.
Wow. Wow.
And there was also reference to Ronald Reagan. Um, actually, there were some air traffic controllers who were striking, and they were all
Okay.
fired, and there's still, not recovery, not
Mm,
a complete recovery of the
mm,
number of air traffic controllers that are
okay.
needed,
And they
to
were
this
striking
day.
based on what was the strike based on at the Reagan National
And work conditions and
Okay.
work hours and pay and that sort of thing.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So there's a lot
So
to unpack. There's
yeah.
a lot to unpack. What do you make of, or in South Carolina, how are people looking? Because the very first thing that Donald Trump did as president is to pardon a broad stroke of the 1,500 people who were part of the January 6th, and I call it insurrection.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
yeah, that's how I see it. But what do you make of that? What lens is South Carolina looking at that, in terms of that actually happening? But that was really the first thing. So,
Right, right. Well, we did have a number of people from South Carolina who were involved in that and who were
okay.
tried and sentenced.
Whoa.
And what is interesting is that one of our state senators, Lindsey Graham,
Mhm.
mentioned the pardonings, and he was opposed to it.
Okay.
He was on the Meet the Press, NBC, talking about it, basically saying pardoning the people who went into the Capitol and beat up a police officer violently, I
Mhm.
think was a mistake
Mhm.
because it suggests that that's an okay thing to do.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there were 34 South Carolinians who were part of that pardoning of, 1,500, 1,600 people.
Mhm.
And, of course, Lindsey Graham says, well, I've always had police back, so I don't want to do anything to incite violence against them.
Right. Mhm.
But, we're also looking not only at the treatment of police officers there, but whether or not there's a peaceful transition of power. And there was a lot of fear actually discussed if Biden won or once he left, if Kamala Harris won, what would
Mhm.
happen.
Okay.
So we still had that fear because of that January 6th.
Mhm.
And we also have some of the people who were part of the January 6th commission who are now being targeted, or there's talk of targeting them.
Right.
So yeah, so I think it has serious impacts for whether we are willing to accept a action of the American people who go to the polls and vote. Are we
Mhm.
going to accept that in our local and state and county elections? Are we going to accept that at the federal level? So
Mhm.
that's the fear that we have there is, if you don't have a common acceptance of the electoral process, you're going to have big trouble.
Mhm. Very interesting. These are very, very interesting times. And there are some people, I'm Terri Wisdom, this is Harlem Network News, and I'm here with a fellow media person, Catherine Fleming Bruce. And Catherine, if you would just share, what is the name of your show, your YouTube channel again, please? Thank you.
My YouTube channel is Catherine Fleming Bruce for the United States. And I also have a pack that I do political work out of. It's called Camelot
Okay.
Excalibur Trust. And you
All
can
right.
find us on ActBlue, or you can also find us on Twitter. I'm on Twitter under TNOVSA, TNOVSA.
Mm-hmm.
And if you follow that, you'll see the link to that, and you can throw us a few coppers in the cup, as they say.
Okay. Love it.
And I think both of us here
Mm-hmm.
would appreciate your support as
Absolutely.
viewers, whatever you could do to make sure that we're able to continue this work would be greatly
Yeah, to
appreciated.
continue the news and information. So,
Mhm.
um, moving forward, we know that a lot of people have been taken out of their job, and you know, President Donald Trump continues every day with new actions,
Mhm.
and some of them are being challenged legally,
Yes.
but there's a lot of tearing apart in terms of who's standing with him. And then there's also been a lot of hubbub about his appointments, his
Mhm.
cabinet appointments.
Mhm.
So maybe you want to weigh in on that and where we ended up with some of them and why, and just where we are
Well,
in
we've
this.
only had one cabinet pick who had to be looped off entirely. That was Matt Gaetz, and he had a probe that was done
Mhm.
on some of his actions that threatened to come out, so he had to be withdrawn. And
Okay.
but he's the only one so far. And President Trump, because there is they have the majority in the House and in the Senate.
Okay.
Um, there is pressure on the Republicans to push the people forward. Now, the Democrats have been very thorough in their questioning of all of the candidates, all the
Mhm.
nominees. Two of the nominees, RFK Jr. and oh, I can't, the name of the lady is escaping
Okay.
me, who
Okay.
she's
Okay.
but both of them are former Democrats,
Yes.
or they ran as Democrats. So they got, Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So Tulsi Gabbard is now up for an intelligence role. Um, she's been facing a lot of challenge. RFK has been facing a lot of challenge. Both of
Mhm.
them are former Democrats. Now, Tulsi has actually moved to being a Republican.
Mhm.
Not sure if RFK has done that. He's probably sticking to the independent.
Okay. Let the
But
audience know, where are we with the RFK and the other one? Tulsi.
okay, well, I think Gabbard has gone through one of her committee hearings. I
Uh-huh.
think RFK has gone through both of his committee hearings. And
Mm.
on Monday, there will be a vote for him. in the Senate.
Okay.
That's where that is right now. So I guess it may have advanced from the committee already if they're saying there's going to be a vote. But I think most of the people, because of the pressure that they're getting from President Trump, I mean, as in pressure to primary folks, if they don't go along, or maybe take some of their committee appointments or whatever they may
Okay.
do.
Okay.
So those folks are probably, most of them are probably going to get through. So we'll wait and see on that.
Okay.
But the counterpoint is how not only Democrats are going to engage with the nominations process, but also the bill making and lawmaking process, how they're going to continue this fold. Now, tomorrow, the Democratic National Committee will vote for a new leader, for a new chair.
Yes, I know
And
that.
that person is supposed to be a activist and spokesman for the party as well. And we would also thank Hakeem Jeffries as the House, Hakeem Jeffries as the House Minority Leader and Chuck Schumer as the Senate Minority Leader are kind of our persons in roles that would counterpoint. But then you also have people like Jasmine Crockett and AOC and Bernie Sanders who are making comments as well. So we'll see what happens there. And we also have third party people who are trying to organize. I think there's a Socialist Party and the Green Party are trying to do something together.
Right.
And then you have the nonprofit groups like the ACLU and Black Voters Matter and other groups that are trying to help people who are under attack to have they're attacking the courts, and they're also giving people strategy for what they can do. You know, if you're on one of these grants and you're not sure what to do, they're going to give you some guidance. If you are a person who has a green card, but you're kind of fearful about how you should conduct yourself, there are people who are providing that information. So, and I also want to add one other thing. We were talking about the executive orders. One of them was shutting down of foreign aid. So a lot of that was happening. And one point that was brought up to me is that you have to look at what foreign aid is paying for. And one of the things that it's paying for is law enforcement who are overseeing ISIS prisoners. And so some of those people had their salaries cut. So you have some of the people who are managing ISIS not on the job. So you hear different things like this, and you have to take into account what.
Understanding. Yeah, because then, as you're bringing that up, other things that have happened have to do with us pulling out of the World Health Organization. That's another one. Us pulling out of whatever the organization is to look at, green space in the world. So
Paris Accords.
Yeah.
The Paris Accords, and also shutting down the communications pages of some of our health agencies, CDC and NIH. They're being told they can't publish anything on their websites.
Wow.
And that's a place where many of us and researchers
during COVID, we got a lot of information. So this is a really when you talk about Brave New World, and it's very interesting because when we talked about Project 2025, a lot of these things are right in keeping with the Project 2025 concept. So it's interesting that this is happening. But the real question is, how can we fight back? A lot of people are very, very devastated. People were very, very devastated with the loss of Kamala Harris,
Mhm.
feeling, not necessarily agreeing with all her policies or, what she was coming out with, particularly on the Gaza war.
Mhm.
Though she was not the president, but I did have an interview with one of our activists and journalists
Mhm.
um, from Washington, Esther Iverem. And, she has a podcast and a show on Pacifica Radio. And, one of the things that she felt is one of the reasons that she wasn't able to win is because of the stance on Gaza and the fact that a lot of people out of that whole Detroit area who were Palestinians just sat out.
Yeah.
So these are things we have to speak truth to power. We can't make believe of any of these things, but these are things to look at. And I mean, when we talk about Gaza, it's very interesting that just the day before the inauguration, the
Mhm.
ceasefire was coming into play. So
Right.
there's a lot of swimming. And even with the ceasefire, we see Israel way out of compliance, in terms of what is actually going on. So the
Right.
question is, how do we, particularly Black and Brown people, because a lot of these hammers are coming down on
Mhm.
us. A lot of the hammers, if they pull out, the federal grants and loans, that's going to impact a lot of our students. It could impact our
Mhm.
HBCUs in particular.
Mhm. Right.
We've got to look at that. The tax structures that are going on. Um, we've got to look at that as well because pretty much the wealthy are the people that are going to benefit, and we are still going to be having a problem. The disparities are great. So,
Right.
question is, how do we deal with this? I don't believe that we sit and whatever is happening, we're like, oh, in 4 years you know, we'll endure this. I don't believe we do that. I don't believe that we have to be devastated that this is happening because we've been here before.
Mhm.
We've been at this point before. 400 years ago, when we came across the Middle Passage, we were dealing with serious things. And we stood up and we fought in many, many, many ways. So I think in my purview, that's what we've got to do now. We've got to figure out ways to do it, but we have to. We can't lay down. We can't be devastated. Our ancestors were not devastated, and that's how we got as far as we did. Even straight out of the Civil War, we were holding a lot of offices. We were involved. We were having our
Mhm.
businesses, and that's how you get, all of these thriving Black towns, Black Wall Streets. There were many um,
Mhm.
that were burnt down, burned to the ground, taken over. Jim Crow came in, but we still stood up and we came out swinging, in the ways. So the question is, how do we address this? We can't sit back. We can't be devastated. We can't say there's nothing we could do because we would always have been told you can't do anything. But we did stuff. We
Right. Right.
resistant to slavery. We did stuff to enslavement.
Right.
So
Right.
what do you see? Because you sit many lanes, many hats. How do you see us addressing these issues that are impacting our daily life?
Well,
As
I see things that I think are going to be effective, and I see things that I think are not going to be effective.
okay.
And so one thing that I think is a lot of people are using some of their energy on is to say, oh, this particular group of people didn't vote or didn't vote the way I think, and look what's happening to them and FAFO and this sort of thing. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can kind of put a lot of energy into that, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not really getting you
Say,
anywhere.
say that again, just so we can grasp it. Yeah.
Okay, well, you have people, especially on social media. I
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of this where people are saying, these folks, whoever they might be, because there was a racial mix of people who, some of them voted for Trump,
Yes.
blacks for Trump, women, whatever.
Right. Yes.
And it's like, oh, now look at them and FAFO, F around and find out. And, so there's a lot of kind of finger pointing
Okay.
that I think is not the kind of engagement that's going to move us forward. It's going to kind of keep in the quibbling, petty lane.
Okay.
So I think the lane and the actions that are helpful are, one, the legal actions that I see some organizations taking.
Okay.
So the ACLU and NAACP and some other groups that are, filing lawsuits and injunctions against some of the actions that are taken by the government and the administration. Donating to those groups is something that you can do to make sure they can continue to do that.
Okay.
So we want to fortify our groups that are doing that work. If you're a volunteer, your attorney, or somebody who is in that scope and you can volunteer, that's great. So that's one thing I would say, is support those organizations that file lawsuits and bring legal challenges in this situation. I see other groups that are starting to come back together. So, groups like Public Citizen and Black Voters Matter and Win with Black Women and so forth, that are coming back together and meeting and talking about specific actions. And they have websites that have places for you to engage.
Okay.
So I think becoming part of those efforts is something that we can do. We can also read up on some of these executive orders and make sure we understand what the impacts are. Look in your state.
Absolutely.
To see what is the impact of this. And, so when we're talking about the freezing of federal grants, for instance, what is happening in your community? What are people saying about that? And you could probably pull some news clips and just summarize that and put that in your social media to let people know. I had a friend who was talking to, she reached out to about 100 young people and asked them if they knew what DEI was, and a lot of them didn't know.
Right. Yeah, it's very important that media really get involved. And as you said, that's why we need the funding, the grassroots media, the Black media, because a lot of our people, either they're watching the CNNs, or they're watching the New York ones, or they're watching the networks, and they're just discouraged by watching it, but I wouldn't say you're necessarily getting totally informed, because what I see happening is them reporting, but at the same point, they're commenting so much on what is being reported, which is their opinion and their bias, that it's not really allowing the public to get straight news and facts. We're getting their opinion, and it's being done in a very sarcastic way. You know what I'm saying? So to me, that's not really helpful, because it's these people's opinion and they're throwing shade everywhere, you know, and you're not getting the facts. I mean, it's very interesting, because here in New York, we have a lot of controversy right now, or controversy that may even be media driven, with our mayor, Eric Adams, in terms of the fact that he, met with Donald Trump. In fact, in the fact that he did push back on the migrant asylum seekers, or immigrants, in a sense that this depleted our city's budget. And it then becomes a lot of conflict, because we have a lot of have-nots in this city, and money is going to the asylum seekers. This is a problem, and it kind of impacts what are the people in the city going to get, so and then more controversy because other public officials are saying, well, New York City had that money anyway, so why didn't they give it to the people? So there's a lot of stuff being thrown around, but I see the people still not getting what they need, and
Right. And
so that's what we've got to look at. And Mayor Adams had a little rage the other day, because there were people saying, oh, he's gonna step down, and he's like, where did you get that from? No, I'm not stepping down, you know and that the news is just saying stuff, and they're not really talking about any of the things that we have done that are good,
now
so
I wanna interject to remind people when we're talking about the have-nots.
mhm.
One place to go that I recommend is the Poor People's Campaign, led by
Okay,
Reverend William Barber.
all right now.
And
Mhm.
he did a lot of work this past year, but a lot of it wasn't really picked up as much as it could have been, by
Okay.
the parties and so forth. So they're reorganizing, and that is a way not only for people to have a better understanding of low wealth and poverty and the impact it has on people,
Mhm.
but what we need to be pressing for
Mhm.
from our governments. This spring is the budgeting process.
Mhm.
So this is a great time to find out, okay, what is the process for city government in
Mhm.
deciding what's going to be funded this year?
Okay.
How can you, sit down with, and it doesn't have to be your representative, it could be a staff person who handles the budget. And some of them may already have a little PowerPoint that kind of
Okay.
explains the budget process.
Right, right. And
So,
as you say budget, and we could go on. We're gonna wind down, we're gonna give our closing.
right.
But one of the things that here in New York State, our New York City comptroller came, and I heard this at National Action Network, Reverend Al Sharpton
Mhm.
came and actually talked about the mean income for New York State for blacks was $19,000. And
Oh,
the
wow.
mean income for whites in New York State was about $220,000.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm going to try and get our comptroller on because
What
when
a
I heard
disparity.
when I heard this, I was like, okay, maybe he misspoke. I don't want to repeat that on the air because that just doesn't sound right. However,
Mhm.
I called his press people, and literally they sent me a document which, you know,
Verified it.
confirms,
Why?
verifies that that's what it is. So when you look at those kinds of numbers
Hmm.
in New York State, it was for the state, but obviously New York City is the money place.
Hmm.
Look at those numbers. You've got to say there's something wrong, something very
Right.
wrong.
And you
And
sure
that
can't live
is
off 19,000
no,
up there.
no. And that is also grounds for reparations. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? That's grounds for reparations. So I think that this is a time that we're really going to have to put our big girl and boy panties on and drawers, panties, whatever you want to call it, but we're going to have to put them on. We're going to have to put our thinking caps on. We're
Hmm.
going to have to open and raise our voices, and we're going to have to become active, as we
Yes.
have many times in history. I even
Hmm.
understand that they were trying to take out the information about the Tuskegee Airmen, and I think
Right.
they
Yeah.
took
I
that back.
definitely push back on
But
that
yeah,
too.
there's a lot. You gotta follow what's going on. Because if you don't, you're not gonna know. And it is impactful to you. And I think we need mass movements like we had during the civil rights time, like
Hmm.
we had during the Black Power movement. We
Hmm.
need mass movement. We need people engaged. And a lot of
Right.
those movements came from the youth. So we need the youth informed, engaged. We need a fire lit under all of us because
Hmm.
the fire next time, you know,
Right.
that's what
Right.
we need. And we can't just lay down and be rolled over. So, one question: what do you think about all of the Elon Musk involvement and all of these kinds of things?
Well, the billionaire class is using their voices, and it makes it harder for the
Mhm,
rest of us to use ours. And many people have called for repeal of Citizens United,
mhm,
which is going to limit the money in politics parts of it. So
mhm.
not only
What is that?
having,
Can you break that down? The repeal.
well, the money in politics has to do with political action groups being able to spend unlimited amounts of money on
Mhm,
campaigns, and some people point to the defeat of Cory Bush and the
mhm.
defeat of Jamal Bowman
Yes.
with
Woo.
these large money donations. So there'll probably be some movement, and hopefully from the people as well as the lawmakers, to say we need to make sure that the voices of the people can be heard and not just the voices of the wealthy. And
Okay.
that's another reason I encourage people to get with the Poor People's Campaign.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Well, it's about that time. We could keep on talking and continue
I'm telling you,
because the
I'm
world is
telling
not
you.
stopping, it's moving fast. And I think on the news today we're hearing, because we have congestion pricing that has happened. It's like a toll if
Mhm.
you want to drive downtown in New York City. And we're not in agreement with that. But for the most part, the middle class or the poor people, nobody's in agreement with that because it's going to impact us. And we're already pressed, if we're getting $19,000, if that's what it is. I think Mayor Adams even was coming up with something where we wouldn't, those that only earn a certain amount of money wouldn't have a city tax. Because right now, if you're a single person in New York City, and you're in New York State, um, 38% of your salary is going to taxes.
Mhm.
38%. So even if you're working, 38% off the top is going to taxes. So we are funding everything, you know. So I just think there's a lot to look at, there's a lot to unpack, but I don't want people to feel that they are helpless and
Mhm.
they can't do anything. Because yes,
Yes.
you can. And one of the
Yes.
things that was great, I am a proud member of Abyssinian Baptist Church,
Mhm.
which is the church of Adam Clayton Powell Jr.,
Mhm.
first Black congressman, who was very proactive on a lot of things. He had a bus boycott back in the 40s, way
Mhm.
ahead of Rosa Parks or anybody, when they
Right.
were not hiring Black bus drivers. He pushed for Social Security. He pushed for a lot of things. So one of the things that's happening in the church is wherein they're saying the Black church was in this movement, be it the Black church, the synagogue, the mosque, whatever it is, it can come from there in
Mhm.
terms of information for the people and organizing the people.
Mhm.
Got to get back to those times, you know. So that's
Right.
another way, but you've got to be part of some kind of organization that is going to move some things forward. And then, of course, Reverend Al Sharpton has been talking about using our economic power.
Mhm.
It's not totally structured because we got to look at like who is not supporting us. And we
Right.
do have dollars. We do have dollars. And often, sorry to say, sometimes dollars are being spent, in I wouldn't say idle ways, but we've got to pool our dollars to support ourselves, to support our businesses, like a Harlem Network News,
Right.
a Catholic,
Right. Right.
yeah, for the US. Yeah, that's what we've got to do. And that is what we had always done, even pre segregation. We had
Mhm.
our own businesses. We bought, so we gotta look at that. So all right, Catherine, let's have you give us some closing statements and some information and advice. Thank you.
Well, I'm putting in the chat, and I'm sure, I don't know that people could see the chat at this
Okay.
time,
Well, I'm gonna try
but
to see it. Uh-huh.
okay, I will put in the chat the name of my YouTube channel.
Okay, great.
And for Twitter, I'm gonna put in my Twitter name
Okay.
so people have that.
Mhm.
And let's see if there's anything else. I'll put my email in there. Why not?
Okay, good. So this way,
Okay.
and can
Oh,
you explain a little bit, because you said you have the trust or the pack. What is that? How does that work? So people can understand.
okay. I'm gonna put the name in there of that.
Okay.
It's
All right.
Camelot Excalibur
Okay.
Trust.
Okay.
So that is a pack that I run, and
Mhm.
its purpose is to allow me to do political activities
Mhm.
that, you know, I have the option of supporting candidates, but right now I'm working on movement building
Okay.
activities.
Okay.
So that is a platform for me to do that in.
Okay.
And my
Excellent.
nonprofit 501c3 work is
Mhm.
T-Nova Global Commons, and that's where I do my historic preservation and
Okay.
writing work.
Okay.
So
I love.
I like you say, have many hats. So I've
Mhm.
tried to, make sure that you have the corporate bounds that allow you to do certain work. So I put those in the chat.
Okay. I
And
see it. Okay.
yeah, there you go. So my
Okay.
closing remarks, and I guess I'd put my email in there too. I'll do that.
Okay. Okay. Mhm.
Tnobza Global Commons
Mhm.
at gmail.com. And I
Okay.
also have CFB at catherineflemingbruce.com.
Mhm. Okay.
So
Excellent.
I'll put those emails in there. And
Mhm.
what I'd like y'all to take away from this is first of all, using those dollars to support independent media is a big thing. So supporting Harlem Network News, supporting Catherine Fleming Bruce for the United States is a
Mhm.
way to do that. Another is look for a political home.
Mhm.
Okay, so political home is a place where you can work with others in achieving the goals, and they will provide training for you,
Mhm.
support networks,
Mhm.
find local people that you can meet with who are doing that. And Win with Black Women is a structure like that, where there's one in Harlem and one in South Carolina and one in California.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you can do
Broken
things
it out. Yeah.
online, and they
Mhm.
have the website, but you also have people that you could do face to face with.
Okay.
Um, think about working with the Poor People's Campaign,
Mhm.
because we need to talk about poor and low information folks, what they're going through, and how to push that legislation. I would go to President Trump's White House page. They have they've changed the White House page, but you
Okay.
can see all of the executive orders.
Okay. That is so excellent. I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that website in here.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna put that in the chat too. Hang on a second.
Okay.
Um, okay. So that is okay. So that's where you can find all the president's executive orders,
Mhm.
up to the 23rd.
Okay.
And so yeah, up to the 23rd is what's on here. So you
Okay.
can read what they are.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
No, very, very important. This is significant. And I
Yes.
appreciate that. And just directly, and if you will email me everything you put in the chat, just in case, so that I can make
Okay.
sure that people get all the information. But what I mean directly, because there's a lot of conversation of, like, I guess you could say, boycotting, not engaging with President Trump. There are people that boycotted the inauguration, and I say boycott, they just didn't go. or, they don't want to deal with him. There are people in different chats and things that I have that they're like, I don't want to hear anything about it. I don't want to hear his name. People,
Right.
and people may grow past that, but how can he is the president. How can we engage with him? Like I said, Mayor Adams is getting heat because they're saying, oh, maybe, um, he's engaging because he's thinking he's going to get pardoned. I don't know that that's necessarily true, but
Mhm.
it's being slanted that way. So the question is, if we engage with him, because we are engaging whether we want to or not, because he's
Right.
engaging with us, like making edicts that impact our lives. Okay.
Right.
So even if you think you're not engaging, you're engaging. If you think that you didn't, you sat out a vote, well, you engaged. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
question is constructively, how do we engage with President Trump? You know,
Right.
because even the Black people that voted, and he doesn't have a lot of people of color in his cabinet. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if he's really trying to deal with us like that. So, but how do we engage?
Well, I think
Or-
we're gonna have to depend on our members of Congress and
Mhm.
our senators.
Okay.
So if they are not having regular briefings
Hmm.
for their constituents, reach out to their office with your concerns. And they may have some things on their website that will
Hmm.
give you some inspiration. But I think that is a real way hands-on, because they're the ones dealing with the president and his administration on a
Right.
day-to-day
Our
basis.
congressperson, our senators, they're the ones who are dealing directly.
Right, right. So
They're
I
dealing
I would,
directly. So our voices need to be heard. They need to know what we want
yeah,
and push for what we want. And at a point, no, nothing wrong with letting President Trump know what we want. You know,
right,
it doesn't say
right.
we're going to get it, but at least nothing, beats a try but a fail, or whatever the reverse of it is. So, we've got to get proactive out here. That's my view.
Mhm.
Let's get proactive. And it starts with media because that is news and information. So I'm sorry I
Right.
interrupted you. I'm getting all passionate here.
No, no,
Oh,
that's absolutely the case. So, reaching out to those people who represent us up on the Hill is going to be the best bet. So they have an office in Washington, of course, but they also have an office in your state.
mhm,
So you can find out, go to the office and make an appointment with those people, with
mhm.
his staffers in your state,
Okay.
and express your concerns and make sure that they have your information so they can send you the updates.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and for them to be able to let the congressman or woman know, hey, you
Mhm.
have people who are, being
Interested in this or
proactive.
want that. Now, are there other ways, because in a lot of instances, from what I've seen, a lot of times, for whatever reason, some of our federal officials, senators, and congresspeople really aren't listening to what the people want or representing what the people want. And you could say, okay, well, if they're not, vote them out. But I'm just saying, right now they're not voted out. A senator is there for 6 years.
Mhm.
So, what do we do? What kind of options do we, the people, have so Donald Trump can hear our voices? How do we push back? How do we push in to get what
Well,
we
I think a good way is to remember that 2026 is the next set of elections that are
Mhm.
going to impact Congress. So
Okay.
they're going to be listening. Your governors are also going to be up, some of them for reelection. So
Right.
that's an opportunity to make sure you're heard, because they're going to be listening then, as you can
Okay.
imagine. So find out who in your congressional world is up for reelection in 2026, and start getting organized with your political home in
Mm,
communicating the things that you want. So
okay.
communicating to their office in your state, to their office in Washington, find out what the NAACP and the Urban League and National Action Network and other groups are doing that you can be part of to help make that voice louder.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Because I truly believe, just based on the experiences that I've seen, is that we have to go. And I think a lot of people are exhausted with the whole political world. So we kind of got to go beyond that,
Mhm.
and the question is, how do you do that? You know,
Yeah,
and I guess media is a good way to do that, to hear our voices and
absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
inform the people. So anyway, it has been an honor. It's been a pleasure. It's been
Thank you.
informative. I just will quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm thinking Marcus Messiah Garvey. One thing that did happen is that President Biden did give him a posthumous pardon.
Yes.
So that's a very powerful thing. Also,
Mhm.
many people may not know that Louis Peltier, the Native American from the whole Wounded Knee thing and everything,
Mm.
he was pardoned. I think he still may like be having to wear a bracelet or be at home, but he's out of prison and he's like 80 or up there.
Oh my
Now, the
gosh.
other person that I feel needed to be pardoned, and maybe we have to have Donald Trump pardon him, is Mumia Abu
Oh.
Jamal. That was someone else that we pushed for the pardons. So,
Oh. Yeah.
there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot that has happened in America beyond what we can even think, even if you think about the Japanese who were in concentration camps right
Mhm.
here in America. But
Mhm.
they got reparations for that. So you got to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
They
there's
certainly did.
a lot to unpack, but we've got to take a stand. We've done it before, we can do it again. And it's not going to be coming from one way. It's going to come a lot of
Mhm.
ways. But we need the people to get engaged. We need the youth to get engaged, and not to have us, because a lot of people are walking around like it's business as usual. They're listening to the music they're listening to, they're buying what they buy, but it is not business as usual. So I'm Terry
No,
Wisdom.
no. And
Uh,
people are starting to wake up
yeah,
to that
starting to
reality.
wake up.
So
Wake
there
up,
are
everybody.
there are people to inspire you.
Mm-hmm.
There are people to work side by side with you. Also, make sure you get your rest because those of us in the trenches, we
Yes,
need to do that
yes, yes.
self-care also.
No, that more than ever is what I'm doing. I'm doing self-care because,
Mhm.
as we got to wear many hats, we got to work many jobs, which we have been doing, from when we were doing the people's housekeeping or working
Mhm.
in the field, and then we had to come home and feed our own children and clean our own house. So that has been a part of our life, but we have got to take care of self so that we can go
Yeah.
to this.
So do that. Go now, have your little garden in your yard, grow
Uh-huh.
flowers, take a walk in the park.
Mhm,
Remember to do those things. And
mhm.
you may have to turn off the tube a little bit, just not to be over bombarded.
Right. Yeah.
Do your work, take your rest, do
Mhm.
your work, take your rest, and
And
we will be
enjoy
victorious.
your life, because I could say, even from going way back to my grandmother, who would be about 124 years old, who grew up in the South, who, came in that great migration. They had a great piece on that on PBS the other night, you know. But one of the things that I can say is there was still life. There was still joy. We found different ways to cook whatever food we had. Nobody was walking around crying or feeling helpless. People were moving. So we got
Yeah.
to move and shake. So I'm Terry Wisdom. This is Harlem Network News. As our sister said, please donate. You can Zelle us. You can Cash
Hmm.
App us. You can call us at 646-261-5397. We have a GoFundMe, and we're making a push to really step up our game. We got to do it. It's 2025, and we've got to do it. We got to be out on Front Street so we can assure that you are informed and engaged. And
Thank you once again for the
okay,
invitation.
thank you. Power to the people, and we will stay connected. Together we win, divided we fall. And
Yes.
in the words of our Marcus Messiah Garvey, we do know that the conditions, and I'm paraphrasing, and the circumstances
Mhm.
will determine the outcome. Which
Yes.
means if you get pressed too far, something's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? And that's the kind of thing. And that's what I think. Oh, last thing. That's what I think the whole Kamala Harris running for vice president, that was a mobilization. We
Mhm.
won in the fact that we mobilized and we pulled ourselves together. But that was the other thing and the thought. Where do you think a Kamala Harris is in this whole process? Like a lot of energy, particularly from all walks of life, win with Black women, win with Black men, the churches, this and that. Um, One of the most incredible, the Democratic Convention, a lot of
Mhm.
energy, which was run by 3 Black women.
Mhm.
I take my hats off to them. Yes, yes.
Yeah, you were in the
Young
room.
Moore.
You were getting all the energy.
Yes. So the question is, where is she in this in terms of leadership? Or what is that? How are people feeling about that? Like, what is it? And
Well, I
first
know
one.
that she is looking at her options. We have heard that.
Yes.
She's looking at the option of running for governor of California.
Okay.
And she's looking at, possibly doing a book or doing something outside of the realm of politics. And she's looking at another run at the presidency in 2028.
Okay.
So she has opened a organization that's going to help her flesh through these options and
Mm-hmm.
decide which one she's going to do. So
Okay.
that's I think where she is right now
Okay.
is just looking at her opportunities and
Okay.
having a group of talented experts who can help her think through that. Now, and there's not a lot of time in the governor's
No,
race
no,
to
no.
make
And
that
yeah.
decision.
So thank you for sharing that. Because
Mhm.
I also think that though there's a structure in the government, there was a grassroots structure that
Mhm.
ran her, you know, which was
Yeah.
so in the grassroots structure, my thinking is what can she do? How can Kamala Harris, VP Kamala Harris, get involved in this real struggle and help to guide us through what we're dealing with? That's just a question. And that may not be what the process is, but
Mhm.
that's my thinking,
Yeah, and
because,
I'm sure that's part of the loop of conversation that they're having.
okay.
Where is she in this particular point, and where is she in reference to those other Democratic Party leaders that I mentioned before?
Mhm.
Your minority House and Senate person, whoever's
Mhm.
going to be your next DNC chair, and so
Mhm.
forth and so on. How would somebody who's just come off the campaign trail work within that framework
Mhm.
of influence? And it could
Right.
be, maybe she ends up doing a show or a podcast or something
Right.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all those things could be
Yeah, because I just
inspirational
say that
options.
leadership comes in many different ways, and
Mhm.
I just feel like we need leadership. We need leadership. We
You're
need,
right.
and we don't need to wait. I mean, if she becomes governor, that's a different story. But we don't need to wait till a run comes in 2028. We've really got to speak truth to power and look at and unpack what is going on. You know,
Yeah.
and not just also be blind, Democrats or Republicans. It's not that. It's like, what are the facts? What is happening that
Mhm.
affects the people? It's not the party. It's the
Right. Right.
issues. So these are some things that we've got to unpack. But if nothing else, the world continues to, turn and change, and a lot going on. The fires got, woof.
And we'll be right there in it.
California and here and there, and there's a lot going on.
Yeah,
So
and we'll be right there in it.
yeah, there's a
So
lot.
I appreciate so much being on the show and
Okay.
talking to your audience
Thank you.
and thinking through this together.
Yeah, yeah. And
Thank
together
you.
we stand. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
You
We
too.
look forward. Thank you.